First afternoon in Berlin, and what do you know? It's cloudy with a bit of rain. It's mostly crappy, but you know what? I don't care because I'm in Berlin, and look at this place. I'm in a park somewhere near the Brandenburg Gate, and just taking a walk around, getting my bearings here. Workshop doesn't start for 2 days, but we are out and about looking around. It's pretty nice. I love this gray, and I'm using the Fuji with the built-in strobe, popping it in there, and also using the neutral density filter to slow down that shutter speed, getting some interesting little motion sequences with little popped-in strobe, which I kind of like. And yeah, it only took me 27 hours to get here. Piece of cake. Somewhere in Berlin. Can't quite figure out where I am. There's no recognizable landmarks anywhere around me. One mistake I see people make is they read reviews and they Google every single thing about coming to a specific city or country. I don't think that's a smart idea, because the truth is, I don't really care what your review of someplace is. I'd rather just see it for myself and make my own decision. And number two, the story that I'm interested in is your story in whatever location we're at. So I can go to Google and I can get every piece of historical information about this city that's available. But that doesn't tell me how you're interpreting that. So really that's the key, is to figure out what your story in a place like this is, and then start making pictures to support that. It's way more fun anyway. Googling everything and reading reviews takes all the mystery out of it, and it's just turns people inside out, is what I've seen.
Our little drone for learning how to fly drones, so kind of a
Whoa.
training drone for learning how to fly. So really
replicate. You can come close, but it doesn't feel right if you're just doing it digitally.
Lions are really quite dramatic. It's not mowing.
And I can see where the shadows are going to go before I press the shutter.
I do, yes, but if you want to get rid of that.
You know the scene in Salvador where James Woods is trying to leave El Salvador and the border guard stops him and looks at his passport and he goes, "It's fake. It's fake." And then James Woods goes, "Okay, I'll be honest with you. It was a rush job." That the first half of this film that you just watched is probably the ugliest thing I've ever posted, but it's a rush job. I just had a Blurb meeting cancel, which gave me about an hour, and I thought, you know what, if I don't do this now, I'm never going to do it. Everything you saw, this footage, that is all of the footage I shot in 3 weeks total. It makes no sense. There was no rhythm to it. Nothing. I realized that I might as well have left that camera at home. I just don't have time to do all the different things at the same time. It just never works. I think if I'm ever going to make a film, I have to go specifically to make a film, and that's it. Or if I'm compartmentalizing a trip, I have to say, okay, these are the days that I'm going to make a film, and I'm not doing anything else. And that's just not really what those trips are about. So I wanted to do a quick update, post that, because otherwise it's never going to happen. And two, I got some questions during the trip that I thought that might be relevant. I think they're good questions, and why not do it? And yes, I did. I did not read a single page. I'm going to get to that in a minute. Am I jumping the gun? Yeah, I'm jumping the gun. I did do some journaling on this trip. That's about the only thing I did. Hang on. Let me see if there's an interesting spread. Is there a good spread in here? I don't know. Maybe. I did a lot of like Instax. A lot of Instax from this trip. But that's about it. So, where was I? First of all, let me start with a long thank you list. This is in no particular order. This is in the order that popped into my muddled brain after having a bit of jet lag. Not bad though. Thank you to Greg Hatton and Frank Jackson for coming to the Berlin workshop and sharing their work and also doing an interview and doing all that kind of stuff. So thanks to Greg and Frank. Thanks to the second Frank, which is Frank Stremke, who came to the Berlin workshop but came to Hamburg, and he gave a talk to the workshop class about the kind of photography that he does, which is this, I don't know the tech behind it. He told me what it was, and I still don't know what it is. He does this like 3D modeling of ancient ruins from around the world. It's weird, and no one else I know does it. But thanks to Frank for coming, because everybody loved it. And if you want to meet someone who's enthusiastic about what they do for a living, Frank would be a good place to start. I need to thank my wife, who was very helpful in so many different ways on this trip, from helping organize things in Berlin and Hamburg with the workshop to basically keeping our London photo walk together. The group obliterated several times, and she was able to help bring it back together. I need to thank my colleagues Mutuala and Bjorn in Europe for basically being a part of all the events in London. I could not have done anything without them. They're awesome. I also need to thank all of the Berlin students. The Berlin class went as well as a workshop can, and all of the students came in making good work, and all of them came out making work that I think is even better. And some of them started laying out books for the first time, or at least thinking in narrative form for the first time. So I thank them for at least being willing to give a shot and try something new. I need to thank all the people that came to the photo walk in London. It was cold and windy. And by the time it was over, we were really cold. It took me about 30 minutes to thaw my hands out. In fact, when I was shaking hands with people at the end, one of the local British guys shook my hand and he was like, "Holy crap, your hands are cold." Yeah. So thanks to all the photo walkers. A special thanks to Karsten, who was one of the students in the Berlin workshop, but Karsten is actually from Berlin, and he's one of the curators at the Natural History Museum in Berlin. I'm a natural history guy. I would take a natural history museum over an art or photo museum any day of the week. It's not that I don't like those other things. We did visit both on this trip, but I love natural history museums, and Karsten was able to arrange us an early morning tour of the Natural History Museum before it was open to the public, and actually got us into some spaces that the public wouldn't typically be allowed. So thank you so much, Karsten, for that. I also need to thank Sam, who is our friend in Brighton. And Sam is a former student of ours at the workshops, and he's a photographer who's also involved right now in a long-term mentorship program with famous Magnum photographers. So good luck with that, Sam, and thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us in Brighton. It made the trip a lot more interesting and a lot more fun. Got to meet his family. Fantastic 2 days in Brighton. And then I need to thank Harris, who I met at the London Photo Walk, who came the following day to look at my zine and show his work and talk about photography. He's a London-based photographer and a super nice guy. He's also 6'8", so he's got that going for him. And I also need to thank Michael for saying hello in the Berlin metro. We were standing there with the class, and a guy came up and said, "Are you Dan?" And I said, "Yes." And he goes, "I know you from the YouTube channel." And people thought, the class thought we had arranged this meeting, but we hadn't. He just said, "When I heard you were coming to Berlin, I thought I would run into you," which is crazy because it's a huge city. And yet we did. We ran into each other, so thanks for saying hello. I need to thank James and Natasha for coming to the hotel in London to show me the work that they're working on, which is pretty fantastic. They've got a really interesting photo essay on London. They had done some beautiful writing to go along with it, and Natasha is also a painter and an artist, and they have all this incredible work, and they were trying to figure out how to put it together. That was a blast. I'm going to do a blog post about them as well. Thanks to Simon for kind of taking over our photo walk and making it a route that was even more interesting than the originally scheduled programming. Simon always does this. Apparently he did it with Raw Society as well, so I like it. He's a prolific photographer who also gave me a new print piece of his. I also need to thank Daniel and Ian for coming by the hotel in London and showing me their works as well, so good luck on those projects. And also, I want to thank Claire, who is an architect in Somerset, who came to the photo and video show to meet me and show me her journals. She had seen something about my journals and become influenced by them, and then she came and showed me her journals, which were fantastic, and also a book of hers that was printed locally in Somerset that was really beautiful. So she's got a lot going on, and I want to do a blog post about her as well. That's my list of thanks. Let's get on to the questions. Number one is, I think it's Balaz wrote me and asked about, he said, how do I populate the images in my journals? And I figured this was a good, I probably have answered this before, but I thought this was a good question for everyone to hear because I get it a lot. It all depends on the method of how I make the journal. So the only journals that I make that have the images printed into them from where the journal is produced is when I make a Blurb notebook. And that's one of the reasons why I love the Blurb notebooks is I can take, let's say, the work from Berlin, which isn't much. I might have 10 frames from Berlin that I like. If I take those 10 images, I can have them printed into the journal or the notebook from Blurb. The rest of the time, the images that go into my notebooks are added after the fact. Some, like on this trip I showed you a minute ago, I used a lot of Instax. But I also have a color printer in my office. I have a black and white thermal printer in my office, and I'm always adding after the fact. And whether or not they're printed in from Blurb or I'm adding them after the fact, I work over all of those images after they've been adhered into the notebook or printed into the notebook. So there's no right or wrong way to do it. Sometimes I make Blurb journals. Sometimes I use, this is a Baron Fig journal. I mix and match. There is no rhyme or reason to it. And again, I'm going to say this one more time because I know how many people get stifled by this. And I think Balaz was the guy who said to me that he started journaling and then he wrote something and he thought to himself when he read what he wrote, he said, oh, this might be great for a travel, like written travel series. And the second he thought that, he stopped writing because suddenly the notebook became for the audience. As soon as he rejected that idea, he started immediately writing again. Again, this is not for you and yours are not for me. Eventually, if you want to share something down the line, do it. But if the audience is behind what you're producing in your notebook, you are marketing, not journaling. And I really don't think you get the benefit. There's nothing wrong with marketing. I work on a marketing team. There's nothing wrong with marketing, but if you're trying to journal for real and you're looking for the benefit that comes from journaling, I really think you can't do it for anyone else. And there's too much bullshit in the world as it is. I don't need to see yours and you don't need to see mine. I'm not selling you all the time when I'm doing films. Like I've said before, my advice to you is don't watch this channel. Go out and make your own pictures and spend every ounce of your time out making your own work. So question number 2 is, what software do I use? And I use a variety of different softwares depending on the kind of printing that I'm doing. Images are edited in Lightroom, and sometimes I will make a few minor tweaks in Photoshop, but I don't know how to use Photoshop. During the workshops, some of the students would put images up and they'd be like, oh, this sky is from another image, and then I made this section of the picture this way, and I added this diagonal shadow, and I'm sitting in the back of the room like, I have no idea how to do that. If someone said to me, hey, add a sky from another image, I would have no idea how to do that. I don't know how to add shadows. I don't know any of that stuff. I literally open it up, and the only thing I can do in Photoshop is I can bump the midtones a little bit and add a little bit of contrast. That's all I know how to do in Photoshop. And the black and white conversion technique that I use in Photoshop, I kid you not, is 20 years old. I learned it from Greg Gorman in LA. It had to be 20 years ago. Just to be safe, I'll say 15. It's the only black and white conversion technique I know. So I am completely useless when it comes to that. But Lightroom, tiny bit of Photoshop every blue moon. And I use Blurb Bookright a lot. I have to make a portfolio from Berlin because I have to do a Blurb Live event about portfolios in about a week. And I haven't shot anything new, so I'll use the Berlin workshop stuff. And that's just basically mocking up how to design a portfolio and why a portfolio is different from a book. There's no narrative in my portfolio from Berlin. It's basically me saying these are the top 10 images. That's what a portfolio is. It's a way for a client to immediately assess the quality of your photography. It's not about your ability to tell stories. It's not about your business. It's not about anything else. It's just a quick reference point for someone who's used to looking at images to be able to determine how good you are or what you can and can't do. That's the purpose of a portfolio. So I use Blurb Bookright, and I also use InDesign. And again, when you speak to me about InDesign, I'm going to steal a line from Jeremy Irons. When you speak to me about InDesign, speak to me as you would a small child or a golden retriever. Yeah, that is the extent of my knowledge about InDesign. I love InDesign. And the fact that Blurb makes a plugin for InDesign allows me to use InDesign. If I didn't have a plugin, no way in hell I'm using that program, because I would certainly screw up the borders and the margins and the measurements, and then when it came time to upload my PDF, the PDF checker would be like, hey moron, no company on earth makes a book this size. So thank God there's a plugin. Thank God to the cones. The cones, we are from Remulac. Thank God for those people for writing that plugin, because otherwise I'd be helpless. That's the extent of my software. Of course, I use a ton of other software for logistics and for Blurb. I'm using Airtable, I'm using Google Everything, blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to think of what else. Teams, which is a nightmare. I use Zoom. I'm not a software guy, clearly. Really, I'm not involved in anything technical. I can change the oil in the van. That is about as technical as I get. I rejetted the carb on the Honda. I felt like I'd climbed Everest. That was my main thing. Okay, question number 3. Lots of dorky, questions about this. No surprise there, but I think, again, even though they're dorky and geeky, they're kind of valid questions, but I'm going to try to keep this concise without unnecessarily irritating a lot of people. I was going to swear there. And by the way, none of my films are child friendly. Again, I've said this before. If you're a YouTuber and you're an adult and all your films are child friendly, you're full of shit. I can guarantee it. That bugs me to no end, because if your films are child safe, they'll get shown to a lot more people, like 12 to 18 year olds on YouTube. I don't really care about 12 to 18 year old demographic. I wish them the best. Don't really want to get involved in the conversations with them. And yeah, that's ageist, because why not? I'm the subject of ageism all the time. I find it wildly hilarious and fascinating. But anyway, my films aren't child safe, so I can kind of say whatever I want. So what was I gonna say about this? I forget what swear word I was going to use, but it was a doozy. It was a doozy. The censors would probably be like, I don't even know what that is. And by the way, I was very fortunate from a very young age to get exposed to some of the most creative swear words ever. And still to this day, they rank right at the top list of people because my dad's ranch partner was epic. Like he said stuff back then that my brother and I now still hold in absolute highest regard. Combination of swear words. So I was in elementary school and he would unleash a barrage of swear words that combined swear words. I can't even remotely say them here because they would immediately shut down my channel. I didn't know how beautiful and poetic this was until much later in life when I realized the kind of lack of effort that people put in when it comes to swearing. The easiest thing is to drop an F-bomb every 3 words, but that gets old. This guy was a genius. He was a swearing poet that just now, I mean, if I said these in public now, I would be disbanded. I would be jettisoned to some remote moon off of Saturn. They were so horrendous, and for that I love him. Still love him. He's probably still doing it. I hope so anyway. So this third rambling idiotic point is about the Fuji X100 which is the only camera I took on a 3-week voyage, Eurolandia. And that's a bit bizarre because normally I would take more camera equipment with me. But thankfully, 5, 6, and 7 vertebrae here are blown. This finger is numb. These 2 fingers are partially numb. So I cannot have a whole lot of stuff around my neck. The Fuji X100 is a fantastic camera, but it's incredibly limiting. Okay, the Nikon ZF, which is my normal, camera, the ZF has a better viewfinder. It has better autofocus. It is built better. It has removable lenses. It's full frame. It does 1,000,000 times more than the Fuji X100. And the Nikon Z8, it's not even in the conversation. The Z8 is something that an alien species brought to Earth to give to us to prove that they're advanced technology. That's what it is. The Z8 does 100 things. The Z8 is the camera equivalent of Photoshop. I know 1% of what the Nikon Z8 does, and what it does, it's just mind-blowing. So I'm not even throwing that in the conversation. But if you're going to compare something like the ZF and the X100 is incredibly limited. It has slow autofocus, the battery's not great, it has a small viewfinder. However, that is not to say I don't like this camera, and that is not to say it's a bad camera, because 1, my wife stole the 5, which is the only reason I got the 6. So there's a couple of things you need to know. First of all, just know the camera, for what it's designed for, the camera works. It works magically. Number 1, the resolution, that extra from 20, whatever it is, 24, 26 with the last gen to the 40 makes a huge difference. The resolution is astounding. It's really good. Secondly, it's built well. And thirdly, it's super light. I carried it around my neck all day, every day for 3 weeks, and I never had a problem with my neck. I can't do that with the ZF. Even if the ZF is on a sling, my back and neck are in so much pain that I'm kind of walking like this, and it's not a strut. It's not like John Travolta. Don't touch the hair. It's not John Travolta in Saturday Night Live or Saturday Night Fever. It's not that kind of strut. I'm gonna do what I do best, strut. No, it's not that. It's pain, which is the reason I only took the Fuji. The menus are simple. The camera's exactly like the other versions. It just gives you a better resolution. The autofocus might be better, and the IBIS is definitely better. I shot a grand total of 2 handheld film sequences with it, murmurations of European starlings off the Brighton Pier, and I can't remember what the other thing was. I'm never gonna use them for anything. I couldn't believe how good it was handheld. And the autofocus was pretty good, even on birds at sunset, murmuration, which kind of like appears and then disappears, appears and disappears. The focusing tracked it. I mean, again, what am I going to do with that footage? Nothing, but the camera works incredibly well. The next thing is, am I going to make a book from Berlin? So you never have to ask a question like that again. Anytime I go in the field, no matter how inconsequentially photographic it is, I will always come home and make something in print from that trip. I could make an 8-page MagCloud digest. I might make a journal or a notebook. And in this particular case, as I mentioned before, I have to do this live event for Blurb next week, and I need to mock up a portfolio. So potentially I might use some of the Berlin stuff. I might use Peruvian multiple exposures. I don't really know, but I need to probably mock up a couple. And if I go through the Berlin work and there's 10 frames that work, maybe I will use it for that. But I always make something. I'm definitely going to add a bunch of things into my journal I already have with the beloved Instax. Oh, this guy was super cool in Berlin. This guy. Oh, he was amazing. Super nice guy. I thought everyone in Berlin was going to yell at me. No, I was like, hey, I saw you standing there, putting out the vibe. Can I make a picture? Yeah, of course. Boom, boom, done. Okay, wait a minute. I think I'm almost done. What about your reading and writing when it comes to traveling? I did not read a single page in 3 weeks. That's not what these trips are about. Most of the time, so at the end of the trip, I went to Brighton for 2 days, and I had no official assignments in Brighton. The rest of the time, I had something every day. I was either teaching the Berlin workshop, or I was doing Blurb events in London, or I was doing a recording. So that little piece of me talking in the park that's at the end of this motion front on this film, where it has no audio, that was purposely done because that was a recording I had to do in London for Blurb. And you guys can't know what I was talking about. It was a kind of a sneak peek to something that's coming up. So I had to do that. There was something every day. And then also, by the way, Blurb doesn't stop when I'm gone. So everything that's going is churning in the background. So all the stuff that I have this week, next week, the following week, into June. I just did a thing for an event I'm doing in June. I just got a request today for 2 more blog posts, one repurposed and one original. And all that stuff kind of continues. And the truth is, when you're traveling and you're doing this stuff, I'm also a part of a team. So I don't want to let those people down, and I don't want to delay them in getting something accomplished that's on their end, because then it puts more pressure on them. They're up against deadlines. So you kind of want to make sure. I think I kind of blew one deadline on this trip. I was supposed to have some information in on Friday of last week, and I didn't get it in, and I completely spaced on it. And then today they were like, hey, we need this stuff right now. So I kind of feel bad about that, but that's what happens when something falls through the cracks. And again, it's pretty fast-paced kind of thing, but it's fun, and I'm not complaining because I think that's the second or third time I've been in Europe in the last year, and I should be back later in the year. I've got a workshop in Morocco, and then I might go to another country to do a project, and then I might end up in Croatia, and then I might end up back in Paris for Paris Photo. But I should know more later. But hey, that's it, my friends. I'm trying to think if there's anything else going on. I did see some new birds. I don't remember what any of them are, but I did see some new birds on this trip. Not many. What else? I think that's about it. I think I'm going to go edit this in, and then I will leave you alone. So I have no plans for upcoming YouTube films. They will just be spontaneous if and when I get a chance. And again, if you just left me alone, if the world left me alone, you know what I would be doing? Oh, I'd be shooting stills and writing. I would never touch a camera with motion attached to it. Again, this trip reinforced that for me. I did ride a Brompton G line in London. That was the one personal errand I had in 3 weeks. 3 weeks, I had on the calendar one thing that was personal for me, which was to go ride a Brompton and verify my size, which I was able to do. So I rode the Brompton G line. And by the way, riding a bike in a country where they drive on the wrong side of the road is kind of terrifying. Because the guy at the Brompton shop said, see that white bike lane out there? He goes, that makes a big loop. Get on that and you'll be back in 15 minutes. Well, 20 yards down the road, or meters, as they say. What is it? I spaced on the line. Agree to disagree. He's like, 20 meters down the road, there's a construction van parked in the bike lane. And when I go around it, the bike lane splits into like 4 directions and I am immediately off course. Then I don't realize, I think some streets are with traffic and some are against traffic. The bike lane would come and go. I had no idea where I was going. And then when there's no cars on the road, there's no reference point. So it was bizarre. Not that it didn't bother me. I would definitely
work it out in no time. And the fact that London has so many bike lanes is pretty fantastic. But I did ride the Brompton G line, and I will put an order in. I know it's overpriced. I'm selling my original Brompton. I'm getting the new one. It was an absolute blast. And the difference between a G-Line Brompton and a classic Brompton riding on city streets is night and day. The G-Line just floated over everything in the street, and it was so much nicer to ride than the classic, although it's bigger and it's more expensive. But again, I'm selling my original. I've already saved about $1,500 from riding my bike instead of driving the van, which was my point all along, to kind of prove to people if you ride your bike instead of drive your car, you can save a lot of money very quickly. And so I cannot wait. It's probably going to be hard to find one here in the States, but I'm going to try to put an order in and see what's what. But that's it. I will leave you alone, and I hope that everything is going well for you in your world. And we're in the middle of an absolute stunning dust storm here in New Mexico. I've never seen this before. I've seen dust storms before. Never like this, and never in Santa Fe. South of Albuquerque, sure. Up here, it looks like the apocalypse. The sky is like orange in the middle of the day. And I thought it was snowing. It's not snowing, it's dust. It's crazy. So we're going to go get under the bed and maybe, I don't know, hide for the next 12 hours.